If you work as a manufacturing facilities engineer, installing a new piece of equipment can be as complex as the machinery itself. From prep work to alignment and testing, it's your team's job to put it all together. That's why it's good to have Grainger on your side. With industrial-grade products and next-day delivery, Grainger helps ensure you have everything you need close at hand through every step of the installation. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Moral issues, government, economy, education, work, responsibility. What we think about these depends on our worldview. Now, VCY America presents Worldview Radio with Brannon House.
And good evening. Oh, not good evening, good afternoon. It feels like evening. We're so worn out. We have walked 1,000,000 miles this week. But we're having a great time here in the nation's capital. We're on Capitol Hill. We're going to be joined by Chang here in just 1 minute, and then Bill Federer. I guess the conclave has started to pick a new pope. We'll talk to Bill Federer about that. Chang's going to talk about, did we just watch China's proxy, India just hit China's proxy, Pakistan. China's proxy being Pakistan. What is going on with that? We'll talk about China, tariffs. Does President Trump have the chance to reshape the Middle East? He's headed to the Middle East next week. Lots to talk about with Mr. Chang and then Bill Federer. We this morning spent some time up in Arlington, at Arlington National Cemetery. We have a lot of footage today. Bringing you some of it tonight on Brannon House Live. The changing of the guard, one of my favorite, probably my most favorite spot to go to when I'm in the nation's capital. Been going there since I was 4 years old, the changing of the guard. Love it. And Logan was there when he was like 3 months old, but clearly doesn't remember it. Today he was there filming it, and we got some amazing footage of the changing of the guard. Also a wreath-laying ceremony and the playing of taps. We also did a little tour of the Arlington Memorial Amphitheater that every president has spoken at since it was dedicated in 1921, except Woodrow Wilson. And we were standing in the very spot where the presidential podium goes, particularly on Memorial Day, where the presidents give a speech. They're in the Arlington Memorial outdoor venue. It's an outdoor venue, amphitheater. We'll bring some of that footage to you. We have so much historical footage we have filmed this week. I'm losing track of it. Logan has it all cataloged, that's for sure. And we're getting such wonderful feedback. And I want you to know, folks, if you like what we're doing, we want you to let us know. Worldview, Brannon, Brannon, Brannon at worldviewtube.com. Whether it's our reporting from the White House lawn the other night or from here on Capitol Hill, what we're filming, which a lot of it you've not seen yet, folks. A lot of it you've not seen. We'll be producing these things into some short format documentaries, historical documentaries. I don't know if I announced it yet, but what our objective here in part, folks, is particularly on the weekends, we're going to be ramping up and turning worldviewtube.com into a conservative alternative to the History Channel on the weekends. And as we build up our library, we'll play more and more. We'll have some normal shows like the Two Docs and different things we play. But we want to be bringing you historical programming and will last for years and years. So a lot of folks are telling us they like that idea. We'd love to know what you think of that. Brannon, Brannon, Brannon at worldviewtube.com. We had a wonderful morning at Arlington National Cemetery. We watched the caissons roll by. Where, for those who maybe don't know what that is the many horses pulling a coffin that is flag draped, the color guard, the honor guard, and of course every day there at Arlington National Cemetery there are many funerals taking place, and so we got a lot of beautiful footage. We'll be getting more. In fact, we knew what was going to happen. We would end up coming here and having more things to film and talk about than we had time. So we're already planning a trip to come back and not only do some great interviews, but also historical stuff as we turn the network on weekends to more of a History Channel as that library grows. It won't happen instantly, folks, but as the library grows. We're here on Capitol Hill on the House side. Member of Congress from Tennessee just walked by, and I introduced myself, and he said, "I know who you are." And I thought, oh boy, Is this good or bad? Then he smiled. He said, I watched some of your videos. And I looked at Logan, and Logan smiled at me, and I smiled back. So apparently some of our programming is getting around to even some of the conservative members of Congress. And we stood there and visited and swapped cards. And we said, well, we've been reaching out to you to try to get you on. He's like, well, this is the first time hearing about it. Who did you contact? We hated to out his staff member. We don't get them in trouble. But we said who it was, and he's like, And then a couple staffers whipped out their business cards and started swapping business cards with Logan. And he was like, well, we're going to take care of that. So it does pay to come up here, folks, because sometimes things slip through the cracks with the staffers. And when you're broadcasting here, you can oftentimes just see members of the House or the Senate, visit with them, get that rapport going, and then they become a regular part of your programs, rotating in and out, like we've done with Congressman Glenn Grothman, MTG many times. So it's been a very, very fruitful trip in many ways. Well, let's hurry along. We've got Gordon G. Chang with us on so much to talk about. He joins us today. Mr. Chang, thank you for being with us.
Oh, well, thank you, Brandon.
So let's go right to what's going on between Pakistan and India. Pakistan, you tweeted out the other night, is China's proxy. Tell me about this conflict and how far is it going to go?
We wish we knew how far it was going to go. India is now trying to de-escalate. But let me try to put this into context. You had a horrible terrorist attack, killed about 25 people in disputed territory in Jammu and Kashmir. And India has struck back yesterday. There's been a series of firefights, and right now they're aerial combat. And aerial combat's important because we have India and we have Pakistan. Pakistan, as you mentioned, is China's proxy. And we probably are going to see Chinese pilots on the Pakistani side, I suspect, if this conflict continues. Of course, Pakistan and India both have nuclear weapons, and so does China. And that means we could have 3 combatants with nukes. In the past, the fact that both Pakistan and India have had nuclear weapons has moderated the conflicts between them. They've fought small wars. They've never let it really escalate because of their most destructive weapons. But we've got to be concerned what might happen this time, because Indian patience has run out with Pakistan and its support for terrorism against Indians.
And you also said in one of your recent comments on X that President Trump has a chance to reshape the Middle East. Explain how he could do that, please.
Yeah, the new president of Syria, Ahmed al-Shara, is actually a former militant, but he has become president of Syria. And he's made it very clear that the Chinese have tried to have approached him, have offered him everything, but he's resisting Chinese money because he doesn't want Syria to end up looking like China. What he wants Syria to do is to become, like the United States. So he doesn't want the American military. He doesn't want American handouts. What he wants is trade and investment with America. He wants Americans to provide services to Syria, which they'll pay for. So essentially, he wants a commercial relationship. This would sort of be the opposite of Afghanistan, where we went in with a military solution. What Shara is looking for is not a handout, not the military, but he wants America's business people, investment people coming in and changing his country. So his country could be a bright spot in the Middle East. This would be historic for the United States because we've been shut out of Syria. So this is going to be a very good story if they can stitch this together. One more thing, Brandon.
And of course,
Trump will be in the Saudi capital on the 13th of this month. I hope that President Trump meets President Shara because they could stitch together trade deals, which really would be good for the United States.
Well, that was my next question. President Trump is leaving for the Middle East next week. He said he has a big announcement that could come as soon as tomorrow, Thursday, Friday, or he said possibly Monday when we leave Washington here. What do you think that announcement might be? I mean, I guess if I had to guess, is it going to be some kind of temporary deal with Iran?
That, I think, everyone would like to see some sort of enduring partnership with Iran, but that's not very likely with a regime that hates us and has vowed to destroy us, a regime which is another proxy of China, works very closely with Russia, and which attacked Israel on October 7th with China's help. I think that President Trump, and this is just a guess, is referring to a trade deal with another traditional American trade partner. And I also expect that probably when he's in the Saudi capital, he'll be announcing memorandum of understandings with the Saudi kingdom, which could be very important in terms of American commercial interests.
Talk to me about, say, Chinatown. We came through Chinatown today. We're not far from Capitol Hill. What kind of influence, I mean, we obviously don't want to paint with a broad brush, but what kind of influence in places like Chinatown and D.C. Does the CCP have in D.C.? I mean, I think that's the case in San Francisco and other places, but what about here in the nation's capital?
Every place that you have a concentration of Chinese, including Washington, D.C.'s Chinatown, you have the Communist Party's United Front Work Department. That's the part of the party that subverts foreign governments. And the United Front Work Department has been active throughout the United States, perhaps most active in the two cities you mentioned, both San Francisco and New York, but also elsewhere. And it's not just Chinatown and Washington, D.C., which a lot of the Chinese have migrated out to Maryland, and you see the Communist Party working there as well. So wherever you have ethnic Chinese, you will have the United Front Work Department.
And then let's talk about, we have a break coming up in about 2 minutes. A computer will take it away. But let's talk about tariffs, China and tariffs. Does President Trump have Xi Jinping over a barrel here?
Well, he certainly does, because we hold all the high cards. First of all, we're the larger economy. China's economy is less than 2/3 the size of ours. We are the trade deficit country. Last year, China's merchandise trade surplus against us was $295.4 billion. Even before Trump's tariffs, the Chinese economy was in real distress, and now it's contracting. So, yeah, we have the high cards. The only thing that Xi Jinping can do is to get President Trump to back down. And I don't think our president's going to do that, because he does believe in tariffs. So I hope that these discussions that are going to occur in Geneva between Treasury Secretary Bessent and U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer and their Chinese counterparts, I hope that we do not give in. And that's really important for us. We got to make sure that they stand firm.
These tariffs, you know, we've been talking to members of the House and the Senate this week about these tariffs on camera, off camera. What I really took away from U.S. Senator Ron Johnson, U.S. Senator Tommy Tuberville was President Trump is taking a gamble, but he has no choice. If you want to defund the deep state, you have got to deal with this issue of the Federal Reserve, the issue of massive debt, how Washington has unlimited access to funds by just creating debt, fund bigger government. And if you want to get control of this, you've got to find a way to basically cut off the funding of the deep state through things like federal income tax and the Federal Reserve, and have an, as President Trump has talked about, an external revenue service, not internal, but external, and even maybe eliminating taxes on individuals making $200,000 or, you know, below. So let's talk about that. How do you think this is shaping out and could help empower President Trump to take on America's enemies by having full control versus the deep state having full control? We'll be back with Mr. Gordon G. Chang live here on Capitol Hill on the VCY America Radio Network and Worldview Tube. We'll be right back. Hello, I'm Brandon House. I want to thank you for all your support at WVWFoundation.com that helps make possible pushing out 24/7 content for free. Without your support, we'd have to put it all behind a paywall. But thanks to you and your support through our foundation, we're able to push it out for free as a broadcast service and broadcast ministry of WVW Foundation. Please consider going there and setting up an automatic monthly contribution, or go there and make an occasional contribution. If you prefer to support us through the mail, you'll find our mailing address there at WVWFoundation.com. You can also call and make your contribution over the phone by calling 901-825-0652. That's
825-0652. Again, all these details are available at wvwfoundation.com. Thank you for your support as we try to help people around the world understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview.
Welcome back. Glad you're with us. Worldview Radio on worldviewtube.com and VCY America. Also thankful for WROS out of Jacksonville, Florida. We're broadcasting live from the U.S. Capitol on the House side. Mr. Gordon G. Chang is with us. And, of course, if you want to follow him on X, you need to go to that particular account. You got to get the G in there, or you're going to have the wrong Mr. Chang. Gordon G. Chang, if you would, please. And you can also find out about all of his great books. He's written many of them. You'll find them. Just put his name into Amazon. You'll find many of his books. But I urge you to follow him on social media. He's very active on X and putting out a lot of great analysis each and every day. A few more minutes with Mr. Chang, and then we'll be joined by Bill Federer. The Cardinals are assembling to pick a new pope. What will that pope look like? Will it be like Pope Francis was, the first Jesuit pope? Or are we about to see a more conservative pope? Is it going to be Pope Pizzaballa, cardinal from Israel, which would be very interesting in itself for many reasons? Or is it going to be maybe the cardinal out of Africa? We'll see. We'll talk to Bill Federer about this and how this all works. I don't know much about it. I'm not Catholic. Bill is not either. I think he was at one time, so he knows quite a bit about it. But I want to track and figure it all out because I know the cardinals are meeting. But how many of them are meeting? How many get to vote? And when will we see the white smoke? And some of you know what I'm talking about. Others don't. You'll learn about it in just a moment. Mr. Chang, welcome back. Thank you for being with us. My question before the break. We here in America, of course, need to learn more about China. And we need to learn more about the deep state and who the deep state is beholding to, whether it's on the House side or the Senate side this week, as I said before the break. My members are saying on camera, off camera, that President Trump's taking a gamble, but he has no choice. Our economy is teetering. Our dollar is diving. Gold is soaring, which isn't really gold going up. It's the dollar going down, its purchasing value. We're massively in debt. We've added about $11 trillion in the last 5 to 6 years. He must figure out something. And if you want to defang the deep state, take away their money source, you got to deal with the Federal Reserve created in 1913, federal income tax. We did it through tariffs at one time. What do you make of members of the House or Senate that are telling us this is how you defund the deep state? You go after this source of funding, and then the deep state has less funds, I would hope, to do the bidding of maybe enemy nations that have been joining with the deep state. What are your thoughts?
This is important. We have learned so much about misguided federal spending, actual fraud, abuse, and waste, as they say. And DOGE has really been important. We've been learning just astounding things about the way our money has been used. And obviously, we can't do this. With regard to China, we know that China is using our money that they get from trade and investment to build their military. President Trump talked about this a couple of days ago. So we cannot afford to continue with this by funding the military that is being configured to kill Americans. That is strategically wrong, of course, but it's also morally wrong. And so that's why we need to support President Trump. We are going to suffer through some pain, but remember, Brandon, that we've had 3 decades of truly misguided China policy, and we've had 3 decades of really terrible trade policy. So, of course, there's going to be pain as we get out of this. That's just inevitable.
When China says that they're our enemy and they want to bring chaos, they want to rule the world, we should believe them, shouldn't we? And if so, where else do you think they are striking? We know there's from unrestricted warfare, as you talk about, written in 1999 by 2 Chinese communist colonels. They're always working in a new way, not necessarily kinetic, but whether it's bioweapons, whether it's information warfare, which is so big, control of the propaganda, the media, funding media outlets, and then therefore influencing their stories. How else are they waging war against us economically, flooding our border? How would you add to that list?
Well, unrestricted warfare means, for instance, these predatory trade practices, the theft of perhaps $500 billion a year of U.S. intellectual property, these intrusions into our military bases, the surveillance of our critical infrastructure, infiltration of our political system. We are seeing cyber attacks, millions of them a day. We've also got the maintenance of secret police stations on our soil. There's fentanyl and every day, this malicious propaganda out of Beijing. So, you put all that together, it's a comprehensive attack on the United States. It's just everywhere all the time. And that means we've got to defend ourselves everywhere all the time. And this is a problem for us because many people don't think of China as an enemy. But China calls us an enemy, and we need to take our cue from what the Chinese regime is saying.
Yeah. Mr. Chang, it's always a privilege and a joy to have you on. You're so knowledgeable, and I hope people will follow you on X. Before I do let you go, is there any other pressing matter that you're watching that I have not addressed today that you need to inform our audience about?
Well, the one thing that I'd say, tariffs, of course, are at the center of the controversy with China. But we've got to remember that they got Chinese agents in our country who are ready to strike. They've been surveilling our military bases, as I mentioned. They're looking at our patterns. They're trying to search out vulnerabilities. And the first clue that we're going to have that China intends to use force in East Asia will be an attack on American soil. This will be the first time since the War of 1812 that we Americans will fight a sustained battle against a foreign enemy on our own soil.
And you've been saying this for quite some time, and you're not backing off from that. You believe this is inevitable, and if so, do you have a time frame?
Nothing's inevitable, but I think that it is highly probable because we're seeing war across the world. Ukraine, Middle East, North Africa, insurgencies that look like wars. We've got now this week what could very well be the beginning of the next India-Pakistan war, which could also involve China and maybe Russia. And of course, there's always the threats that China poses to its neighbors in East Asia. So the world is aflame, and it's getting worse and worse by the week, which means that although not inevitable, it's extremely probable that we will be at war because we will be attacked.
So Americans need to prepare. Of course, that's what we've been really urging them in spades since 2016. We were warning before that, but we actually put up a website after our audience begged for it saying, what have you done, Mr. House, to prepare? What did you buy? Where'd you get it? How can we follow your pattern and learn from what you've done so we don't have to reinvent the wheel? So we put up a website about that in 2016. So it's something we've been warning about, and I agree 100% with you. I do have one final question. Here we are in Washington, D.C. There's media on the House side. There's media on the Senate side. We're on the lawn of the White House the other day. Media there. We're an independent media outlet. We don't, as you know, we don't get funded by USAID. We don't get government money. We're not funded by the George Soros types. How many of the media outlets, either in the nation's capital or around the country, how many of them are getting money through China, whether not directly, maybe through some of their proxies or groups or nonprofits or foundations that they fund, and then that money's funneled to American media to control the stories that are reported on. In other words, don't interview people like Gordon Chang. Don't go the direction where Brandon House asks these kind of questions of someone like Mr. Chang, and therefore maybe you're not welcome, or this topic is not welcome on certain networks because they have been bought and paid for by the CCP. Is that a real possibility?
Well, that is a real possibility. I don't know the number, but we know that China does use propaganda and media, especially they use social media. So, for instance, they create a lot of fake accounts in places like Twitter or X, Facebook. In the 2020 campaign, they actually worked very hard for Joe Biden using these bots. They also use text messages, which is really a sort of a new form of media. And they were very successful in creating chaos in that campaign, which I think helped Joe Biden win in 2020. So, yes, China is very much out there. And they use a lot of money that filters in through various ways, including ActBlue. which is the Democratic Party website. This is really a problem that the Trump administration needs to get its hands around, because there's a lot of foreign funding. And it's not just the Democrats, by the way. Foreign funding ends up in Republican coffers, too. So we've got to make sure that we remember this is a bipartisan issue.
Mr. Chang, as always, thank you for making time for us.
Thank you so much, Brandon. I really appreciate it.
And we're going to ask our audience to continue praying for the fast healing of your in-laws who were in, I think, a car crash a few months ago, correct?
Correct. That's why we're up in Toronto right now with Lydia's parents. They had a miraculous recovery, and my mother-in-law said she could feel people praying for her. So we thank everybody for their prayers, because faith does heal.
Amen. Thank you, Mr. Chang. Greet your lovely wife for us.
Thanks, Brandon.
Mr. Gordon G. Chang. If you want to follow him on X, folks, you got to get that G in there. Gordon G. Chang. And you can follow him on X. By the way, he'll be one of the keynote speakers at our National Worldview Weekend, the 22nd Annual National Conference, this coming October 3rd and 4th. We only have 350 seats. Mr. Chang will be one of the speakers. We also will have Alex Newman there. We will have with us Sidney Powell with us, talking about the weaponization of the legal system. Folks, there, you want to talk about that? Let's talk about our friend that has been put up to be the U.S. District Attorney for Washington, D.C., Ed Martin. Ed has sat in and been a guest host for one of our shows at the noon hour Central Time about 40 to 50 times. He's been in our studio. He is a patriot, conservative, a man of faith. He worked with Phyllis Schlafly for years. He led Phyllis Schlafly's Eagles. And we have the senator from North Carolina that apparently doesn't want him. A Republican, by name only, of course, I think. And so Mr. Grassley of Iowa doesn't want to bring the vote up unless he thinks he can get the votes for him. What's very interesting, folks, a little inside baseball, how Washington works sometimes. People that should have come out on Monday or last week supporting Mr. Martin waited until the vote was tallied and they knew they didn't have the votes to confirm him. And then they come out and say, oh, I'm for Mr. Martin. Oh, I support Mr. Martin. Well, great. You should have done that when they needed more support to get the ball rolling. But you wait until you know there's not enough votes to do it, or that it's not going to be submitted for vote by Mr. Grassley. And then you come out. And that way you can say, oh, look, see, I'm a conservative. I was for Mr. Martin. Or Mr. Trump. I was for your guy. Well, were you really? Why weren't you on the team early on? So, folks, understand we learned this week a little bit more about how the game in Washington is played. I saw one conservative news outlet put out a story yesterday saying the support is growing for Mr. Ed Martin. No. I called a source very close to Mr. Martin, who said this is the typical dance in Washington. People say, oh, I support him. After they now realize, no, it won't happen. They can come out and say they support him. They didn't really want him, I don't think. If they did, they would have been out here earlier helping him. So what will happen now with Mr. Martin? Apparently, now we got to remember this judge, this very liberal judge that wanted the MS-13 thugs that were on the plane headed to El Salvador to turn around. Well, this judge, I guess, can appoint a U.S. district attorney. But I'm also told President Trump can go ahead and appoint Ed again as a recess appointment, as a vacancy appointment, I should say. Apparently, this has gone on with even one of Biden's, I think it was Labor Department, never got confirmed, just kept getting reappointed. So apparently, I'm being told by this very close source in his office that is likely to happen. But at some folks, it'd be nice to see him confirmed. Maybe let your member of the Senate know, 202-224-3121. We'll be right back with Bill Federer.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Melissa and I have been taking Bella Grace, this powerful elixir, since last fall, 2023. The results have been amazing. My hands would crack and bleed, deep cuts and cracks every winter for years. No matter what we did, we couldn't get them to stop cracking and bleeding. This year, I took Bella Grace, no cracking, no bleeding. My acid reflux, gone. Haven't had to take a Pepsid. My hair growth, the last 2 times I had my hair cut, the lady had to Use thinning shears on my hair. That's amazing. We've also received incredible feedback from you, our listening audience, and the impact it's had for you. This is loaded with astaxanthin. That's a powerful antioxidant. Collagen, but top grade collagen. Studies show 95% of it is being absorbed in the body because of the way they develop it. Then we have something called cat's claw. That's an anti-inflammatory from a vine in Peru. It's the bark, and it's an anti-inflammatory. There are about 80 clinical trials on Bella Grace. Please get a subscription now and save. MelissaHousebg.com.
All right, welcome back. Glad you're with us. Reporting today from Capitol Hill on the House side. Again, thank you to all of you that have helped make this trip possible, in part through our foundation, worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. And if you appreciate what we're doing and the coverage we've been bringing to you, then, by the way, there is so much more to come. We have so much footage, as I said, that you have not seen, that we will be producing into short format documentaries. And so if you like what you've seen and heard so far, you just wait, okay? But if you like this and want us to do more of this, and not only to the nation's capital, but other historic sites, let us know, because we're willing to do this. I didn't think I was willing to get out of the studio and do much. I pretty much like my schedule. But I have to tell you, they broke my schedule, brought me out here on the road, and I have to tell you, I've really enjoyed it. I didn't at first. The first, 24 hours, I was like, well, I can't wait for this week to be over and get back home. And then all of a sudden, the energy changed. And I don't know what happened, but I don't know, maybe getting good interviews, good opportunities. It's like, hey, wait a minute, we're actually doing something. We're accomplishing something. It did help that the weather cleared up. We were dealing with rain for several days in Dayton, Ohio. In fact, it was so cold in Dayton. And then it was cold and rainy here, and then it cleared up. The sun came out. We started getting amazing footage, again, for these documentaries we'll be producing and bringing to you free of charge, brought to you in part by our foundation. And so it's like, wait a minute, we're accomplishing a lot here. And of course, when you're in broadcasting, can I just tell you, content is king. In one essence, that's a famous slogan we use around here. Content is king. You know what? People want good content, quality content, biblical Christian worldview content. They don't want silliness. They can turn on places where people are being silly and cute and maybe even a little juvenile. That's not what we do. That's not what we want to do. Do we laugh? Do we cut up? Yep. Do we have fun with our studio dog Dolly and other things? Yep. There's a wonderful place for laughing and having fun. But at the end of the day, you got to bring the content, right? Reason, logic, context, content, history, understanding, knowledge, acquisition of truth, wisdom, application of that truth. And man, we got so much footage this week that we're going to be able to do that. And so I got pretty excited a lot. I thought, you know what? Look at all the content we can take back to those guys in the control room. And we're going to have some very busy bees in the control room. And I know they're listening to me outside of Memphis there in the Mid-South. Very busy bees producing a lot of little short format, long format documentaries with what we produced. So if you like what we're doing, why don't you email me, Brannon, Brannon, at worldviewtube.com, and let us know what you think. Worldviewtube, Brannon, Brannon, at worldviewtube.com. I did mention the fact we got our national conference coming up October 3rd and 4th, but I don't think I mentioned where you can register. There's only 350 seats. There's a banquet on Thursday night, banquet concert with a speaker, Hadia, the former Muslim who worked in the government, who became a believer after someone introduced her to Jesus and the Bible. She became a believer. She'll be speaking for that banquet on Thursday night. Seating is limited for all of these. And the conference itself, Friday night and Saturday, only has 350 seats available. We lowered the price down to $99 a ticket because we were able to pick up a beautiful theater in our town, owned by the city, at a very reasonable rate, and we passed the savings on to you. So we brought our ticket price way down. Okay, so I hope you can make it. Now, Memphis is a safe. Oh well, let me just say this: Collierville, Tennessee, Germantown, where we're holding it, is very safe. They have a big police force in both places. It's like comparing going down to the worst part of Chicago versus a beautiful suburb like Naperville, Illinois, right? That's what this is. Yes, there are problems in parts of Memphis. There are problems in parts of St. Louis and Kansas City and every other Milwaukee. But you're safe out there in Waukesha, right? So, or Brookfield. And I could name other suburbs, but those are the ones I can come up with right now. Economowalk, I don't know, that just came to mind. Collierville's the same way. Germantown's the same way. So don't let that scare you. I read on social media this week where people saying about Memphis, I'm like, nobody's going to want to come to my national conference, guys. But we're in Collierville, not in Memphis. We're in Collierville. So go ahead and get registered. What is it, Logan? Worldviewstore.com. Worldviewstore.com. There are seats left. I think we have 350 available. Over 100 are gone, but we have some still available. Worldviewstore.com. If you prefer to make your reservation over the phone, you can call Melissa's line, leave her a voicemail or text. She'll get you booked up. All the hotel information is there as well. And that number for her is 901-825-0652, 901-825-0652. I know we have Gordon Chang, Sidney Powell, Alex Newman. I think we got Dr. Andy Woods. He's not on the website, but I think he'll be there. I can't even think of all of them. Chris Martinson, Mark Mitchell of Rasmussen Reports, all of it, worldviewstore.com. All right. Let's head over to our friend Bill Federer, the historian Bill Federer. Hello, Mr. Bill. How are you doing?
Brandon, great to be with you.
Great to have you on with us today. We are in the nation's capital, a place I know you've spent a lot of time. By the way, we're talking to Bill about him coming back with us this fall and us spending a week together, interviewing Bill at very historic sites to produce, again, more historic content as we try to turn Worldview Tube on the weekends into more of a history channel. We'd still be having some of our normal programming that you're used to, but we want to do more and more of it being a conservative history channel on the weekends. And so Bill's talking with us today about spending a week with us here in Virginia and probably down in Williamsburg and other places. So, Bill, we look forward to that. I think there's before we get to the topic of the Pope and the new Pope being picked, I think there is a need for this as the places like the History Channel and others seem to be going a little woke. Don't you think, Bill?
Right. I tell people history is not prophetic, but it is predictive. Past behavior is the best indicator of future performance. Winston Churchill once said, the further back you look, the further forward you're likely to see. So when we look at this history and see what's happened in the past, we sort of get an indicator of how human beings will act in similar situations in the future. And America is a story of taking power away from kings and giving it to the people. And so we're an experiment of us ruling ourselves. We've been a little negligent. We've had just about a century of a religious teaching that says it's holy not to be involved. It's like, okay, if the Christians aren't involved, who's left to be involved but the non-Christians? It's like, what do you expect? And so this idea is if you really think that having a personal relationship with the Lord is important, don't you want your kids to have a chance to have a personal relationship with the Lord? Because if you don't get involved, they're teaching your kids that God doesn't exist, there's no sin, and there's no need for a Savior. I tell people, you have to admit it's a pretty clever trick the devil's pulled to get Christians who believe the gospel of Christ, let their children be taught the gospel of Antichrist. It's like, oh, we don't want to get involved. We'll let worldly people teach our kids. So, Jesus said, if you allow one of these little ones that believes in me to stumble, better that a millstone be put around your neck and you be thrown in the depths of the sea. So all these people that think they're being spiritual by not being involved, it's going to be a rude awakening for them. But anyway.
Yeah. Let's talk real quick. Then I want to go right away to the Pope here. I want to go right to the Pope. Before I do, though, the D.C. is covered right now, not nearly what it will be next week, but it's covered with a lot of school kids. We had 7 motor coach buses pull in where we're staying the other night. We got to visiting with about 4 of the drivers. And so I visited with them, and Logan and I did, and Dolly the night before last. And then last night they saw us come in. They came in. So we sat and visited with them. And, man, they were shooting. When they found out what I do, they were shooting questions at me about China and Russia. And, they were shooting so many questions at me, these 4 bus drivers. And so I'm sure we'll meet up again tonight until we're out of here Friday. So we've made some friends with some bus drivers from Ohio, and they've got 7 buses loaded with middle school kids seeing the nation's capital. Well, today we were at Arlington National Cemetery, and some of the footage we'll be releasing tonight on Brandon House Live of the changing of the guard and the playing of taps where the with a wreath laying, you'll see all of these, a lot of middle school kids. Some might be high school, but a lot of them look middle school. That was encouraging. I'm like, well, look at that. And I'm told next week, I was told by people, in fact, those bus drivers said, this is light compared to what next week's going to be like. This town will be covered in motor coaches and high school kids and middle school kids next week, even more so. Okay, that's great. But Bill, quick question, then we'll move to the Pope. What are they being taught? I'm glad they were at Arlington National Cemetery, but if they get a tour guide in some of these places, are they being taught the kind of history that Bill Federer would teach them, or has it been whitewashed?
Yeah, well, unless they get a good tour guide, there's a chance they'll just get woke rhetoric that everybody in the past were bad slave owners, and ignoring the fact that it was Christians that came up with the idea of freeing the slaves. They were Quaker Christians, and the Union, hundreds of thousands of Union men and women risked their lives and died to free the slaves. So it's not a hardware problem, it's a software problem. It's not a skin color problem. It's a teaching, a brain problem. Is it, love your enemies and do good to them that hurt you and turn the other cheek? Or is it cancel them, make them pay, and make their kids pay? Right. And so we need to, but anyway, whatever the tour guide is, there's a lot of rainbow flag type stuff that gets taught that is maybe not what is best for the kids.
Yeah, all the more reason why we need to be doing this conservative Christian worldview, historical, patriotic, accurate history programming on Worldview Tube on the weekends, and that's why we're here gathering in part a lot of data, a lot of footage to produce that, coming to you very soon, folks. So your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren can learn from this. I want my granddaughter to learn this, and I'm sure I'm going to have some other grandkids come along, but I want her, as soon as she can understand it, start watching programs like that, right? All right, let's talk about the Pope. The Cardinals have gotten together. How many of them are there? We got a break coming in 2 minutes, but how many Cardinals are there? How many of them will be allowed to vote? The conclave started today, and what takes place now?
Right. So people may not be Catholic, but there are 8 billion people in the world. A third of them, 31% or so, are Christian. And out of that, close to 1 billion are Catholic. So the Catholic faith is the largest Christian denomination in the world and the oldest. There are 252 cardinals. And only those under 80 years old can vote. And so that makes it to 135, but 2 of them are sick. So now we're down to 133. And out of those 133, 108 of them were appointed by Francis, the previous Pope. So the concern is that his agenda, where blessing of homosexual unions and changing words in the Our Father and things that are more of a progressive nature may be reflected. There is 266 popes so far, and there's an ancient Saint Malachi prophecy that there'd only be 266. The last one, according to this ancient Irish saint, would be named Peter. And so there's 3 different cardinals' names being mentioned with the name Peter. So who knows? But Catholicism is sort of declining in Europe and in Western countries, but in South and Latin America, it's growing, and especially in Africa, interestingly enough. They've had a 3.3 increase there. So it is something that we need to watch, even though you may not be Catholic. I mean, those in the viewing audience, the non-Christian world still views the Pope as a major person representing Christianity in the world. And so they're going to meet in the Sistine Chapel. I actually went to school and college in Rome, and so I went to the Sistine Chapel many times. That's where you have the picture of God's finger touching Adam, that famous painting. They're going to be meeting there. They'll vote, and they'll collect the ballots. And if there is not 89 votes for a particular one, they burn those ballots with something mixed in.
All right, hold right there. Hold right there. Hard break. We'll be right back with more. Don't go away with Bill Federer.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Is the government tracking you? Do they have access to all your data? Well, if you go to worldviewtalk.com, you'll find out about a cell phone company that, does not store your data. They don't do that. This is what they're known for. They don't store your data. You have privacy. You're not being tracked. That's why a lot of folks are turning to worldviewtalk.com. You'll find their prices are very competitive. All the details are there at worldviewtalk.com. Again, worldviewtalk.com. Oh, while you're there, not only do they have cell phones that aren't tracking you, you can find out about how to get a satellite phone. Should the whole system go down and you want to communicate with a family member or loved one, you might want to have a satellite phone. Or how about their solar generators? They have great solar generators. Check them all out right now. Worldviewtalk.com, worldviewtalk.com.
All right, welcome back. Glad you're with us. Worldview Radio, our website, worldviewradio.com. Worldviewtube.com is where you can watch a lot of footage. It's quite a bit, but nothing compared to what we have in the can that we're taking back. Well, I guess we don't put it in cans anymore, do we, folks? That's an old saying. We put it on an SD card, and then we load it up to the hard drive of a computer, or we put it on the cloud or on Dropbox. But we got a lot of stuff. I don't know where you keep it all, Logan. In the cloud, Dropbox. I think we back it up to multiple places in case something goes missing. But wait till you see what we've got. But if you want to see what we've done thus far, including broadcasting last night in front of the Blair House, where the Prime Minister of Canada was staying for a while, and while we were on the air last night, they pulled the Canadian flag down from the top window of the Blair House, right across the street from the White House. We had the Blair House in front of us. We have the old executive office building, which is used by the vice president, his formal office, about 2,000 employees of the White House. And Nixon used to have his hideaway office there, as they talked about it. So that was behind me, and we turned around and talked about that. And we had the Blair House in front of us, but they pulled the Canadian flag down and put the American flag back up while we were on the air last night. So we got that. Talked about the history of the Blair House and old executive office building and more. All that's now at worldviewtube.com. And more to come today, including tonight, the changing of the guard at Arlington National Cemetery, a little tour of the Cannon building, the building we're in now, one of the, I think, 3 house buildings here, and then probably a little tour of Union Station. We got a lot of surprises left to go, folks. Lincoln Memorial, Jefferson Memorial, a lot of things coming. And we'll do documentaries on some of those things, too. Again, so your young people, Ford's Theater, so your young people and high school kids, college kids, maybe so your grown adults don't know all this, right? We filmed where the attempted assassination of Reagan took place. We'll do that into a short format documentary as well. All right, worldviewtube.com. All right, Bill, if they don't get enough votes, they pour a chemical on it and the smoke turns black out of the smokestack. If they get the right number of votes, they got themselves a pope, they pour a chemical, and out comes the white smoke from the top of the building where the conclave's going on. So, when do you think it'll have white smoke? Normally, it's been taking 2 to 3 days to pick a pope by the cardinals, Bill?
Yeah, nobody can predict, but there are some names in the front running. One is Pietro Parolin from Italy. He was appointed by Francis. A little more on the progressive side. Another is Matteo Zuppi from Italy, appointed by Francis. There's a Cardinal Toggle from the Philippines, and he is considered the Philippine Francis. He is catching a little heat because he's saying John Lennon's Imagine in 2019 for some service. And of course, that's not your typical faith song. There's a Peter Turkson, a cardinal from Ghana, and then a Cardinal Peter Erdo from Hungary. And so those are some of the names in the running. Again, 3 of them have Peter in the name, and according to that St. Malachi prophecy, that the last pope would be named Peter, and then after that, the end would come. It's interesting that within the Catholic Church, you have conservatives, and conservatives are saying that if there is another liberal pope like Francis, who's blessing same-sex couples and saying that there's a brotherhood between the Catholics and the Muslims, and says nothing about the different genocides, but talks about climate change. If there's another progressive pope, there may be a split inside of the Catholic Church. So this is Crisis Magazine, a conservative Catholic magazine. Today, May 7th, 2025, a Cardinal Gerhard Mueller from Germany. He did an interview with the Times of London, And he says, no Catholic is obliged to obey doctrine that is wrong. Catholicism is not about blindly obeying the Pope without respecting Holy Scriptures, tradition, and the doctrine of the Church. He says that the Catholic Church risks a schism if it elects another liberal leader like Pope Francis. The alternative, he said, was for the Church that risks splitting in two if an Orthodox Pope is not elected. He says the next Pope should not look to the applause of the secular world that sees the Church as a humanitarian organization doing social work. Mueller goes on to say, the question is not between conservatives and liberals, but between orthodoxy and heresy. He said, I am praying that the Holy Spirit will illuminate the cardinals because a heretic pope who changes every day, depending on what the mass media is saying, would be catastrophic. Mueller says that he took issue with crowd-pleasing popes that hug and kiss babies, a reference to Francis, who did just that during his final Pope-mobile ride. And Cardinal Mueller ends by saying, not everybody wants to be kissed by old men, he said with a smile. So within the church, you have this conservative. There's a great conservative Cardinal Sarah from Africa. There's a very wonderful conservative cardinal named Raymond Burke. He was so conservative that Pope Francis took away his jurisdiction, put him over the Knights of Malta, but then sort of took that away from him. Then he had an apartment in Rome, and Pope Francis took away his apartment. It's like, here's a cardinal, and he doesn't even have a place to stay. And then Pope Francis personally defrocked, which means unmade a priest, Father Frank Pavone, who led Priests for Life. And he was so pro-life that Francis stripped him of being a priest. And then you have this Cardinal Vigano, very, very conservative. And Pope Francis had him excommunicated. And so the fact that Francis had put 108 of the 133 needed that are voting, there's questions if they're going to pick another progressive one or if they're going to want to return back to a more conservative stance.
Wow. Well, it's all unfolding right now. And do you know when the first vote takes place?
Well, I'm sure it's going to be today. Another little bit of trivia. The CIA has a link. It's called CIA.gov, and there's the World Fact Book. And you can click on it and look at any nation in the world and pull up all the statistics about that nation. And you can pull up the United States. And under the category of religion, it says the United States is 46.5% Protestant and 20.8% Catholic. And so that's 66, almost 67% Christian. Now that's down. I've been looking at this website for 30 years. 30 years ago, the CIA.gov website said we were 94% Christian nation. And
wow, that's our broadcast. We're out of time. Bill Federer, AmericanMinute.org, AmericanMinute.org. Stay tuned for Crosstalk with Jim Schneider coming up right now. Take care.
This has been.
And that's our broadcast on those stations. We're back with WROS and Worldview Tube. We normally I have a little chatter here, but I'm going to give the control room a little heads up. I need to go. We've got so much to do today to get our interviews in and record some programs for Brandon House Live tonight. We've been recording a lot of those while we're here because not everybody wants to stay up till 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock with me, right? So we want to go record some interviews and hit a couple more historic sites to bring you tonight on Brandon House Live. Brandon House Live to Tape. Maybe that's what we should call it tonight. Brandon House Live to Tape at worldviewtube.com, worldviewtube.com. So I'm going to give the boys a heads up to roll to something else if they would. But hey, if you appreciate all we're doing, we need your support. Worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. If you appreciate what we're doing, we'd love to hear your feedback. Brandon, BRANNON, at worldviewtube.com, Brandon at worldviewtube.com. Don't put a D in there. I don't care if you call me Brandon. It doesn't offend me. You can call it a lot worse. But if you want the email to get there, you do need to spell it right, I'm sure. BRANNON NNON at worldviewtube.com. And again, let us know. Would you like to see us do more of this on the road reporting? Also, we need your support now. Worldviewfoundation.com. You'll find our mailing address there. If you prefer to support us through the mail, we not only need to bring in our normal support amount each month, but a little bit extra this month to help cover the cost of producing these programs, being here, producing them, and pushing them out for free. Free programs, free content, free platforms that they're streaming on. But it's very important we have your support, because otherwise, how do we fund it all? It doesn't happen then. We're a listener-supported network. You can support us. Worldviewfoundation.com. Another way is consider the great sponsors we have. We have to have all these things, the foundation and our sponsors, to bring in what we need every month, or we don't make it. I wish we brought in enough for the foundation to take care of everything, but we don't. It doesn't. So we have to have some sponsors, but they only pay us if you use their products. And their products we believe in. Before I got off the motor coach today, I had a Bella Grace. We take our Gatatana every morning, so we have the energy to keep going. We swish with our Numi every day, the power of 3. You'll find Numi, you'll find Gatatana, you'll find Bella Grace, all there at worldviewtube.com/sponsors. Worldviewtube.com/sponsors. You'll also find a lot of other great sponsors and products and services that we personally use. Otherwise, we don't promote those companies or organizations. So if it's on our website, we use it, we endorse it, we're using it. Worldviewtube.com/sponsors. Check that out now. So whether worldviewtube.com/sponsors or worldviewfoundation.com. These are the ways that you're able to help us fund this listener-supported network. All right? Hope you go to worldviewtube.com. Look at all we've been doing this week. More to come. More to come over the next weeks and few months as we get all of this stuff that we filmed that you haven't seen, post-edited and filmed into short documentaries and even some long-format documentaries. All right? But check out what we've got so far, worldviewtube.com, and ask yourself, who else is doing this from a Christian worldview conservative standpoint? We can either complain or we can go out and create a network like Worldview Tube that we've done, but we have to have your support. So thank you for that. We'll see you tonight on Brandon House Live at worldviewtube.com. And we'll be back next week with our regular schedule of Worldview Report and everything else back in the studio. Okay, I know we've taken off this week for the Worldview Report. I just don't have the time to collect all the news and put it all together and run around the nation's capital at the same time. So we've taken a break from that, but all that will come back normal schedule starting Monday. All right? Until next time at Brandon House. May God save America. Take care.
But with Brandon, it's always cutting edge stuff happening in the world. And it's not just from the political angle, because you can get that on other platforms, but it's always from the biblical angle. So you're dealing with a guy that loves Jesus, you're dealing with a guy that's very intelligent, you're dealing with a guy that is cutting edge conservatism, and you're dealing with a guy that wants to be biblical all at the same time. And so for that reason alone, I hope many, many people will not just lift up his ministry in prayer, but will also financially get behind it, because from the angle I'm trying to describe, he really is the only game in town. And we desperately need it in these last days. Can I get an amen to that?
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Is the government tracking you? Do they have access to all your data? Well, if you go to worldviewtalk.com, you'll find out about a cell phone company that, does not store your data. They don't do that. This is what they're known for. They don't store your data. You have privacy. You're not being tracked. That's why a lot of folks are turning to worldviewtalk.com. You'll find their prices are very competitive. All the details are there at worldviewtalk.com. Again, worldviewtalk.com. Oh, while you're there, not only do they have cell phones that aren't tracking you, you can find out about how to get a satellite phone. Should the whole system go down and you want to communicate with a family member or a loved one, you might want to have a satellite phone. Or how about their solar generators? They have great solar generators. Check them all out right now. Worldviewtalk.com. Worldviewtalk.com. Hello, I'm Brandon House. Melissa and I have been taking Bella Grace, this powerful elixir, since last fall, 2023. The results have been amazing. My hands would crack and bleed, deep cuts and cracks every winter for years. No matter what we did, we couldn't get them to stop cracking and bleeding. This year, I took Bella Grace, no cracking, no bleeding. My acid reflux, gone. Haven't had to take a Pepsid. My hair growth, the last 2